talk to us a little bit about what we're looking at here.
All right. So this is, as you can see, you guys have it on the gun. So this mount, what it does is it gives you the ability to mount your red dot optic, your 3x magnifier on there, have a true alignment, be able to easily and quickly, just as Augie displayed there, flip your 3x back and forth. All it is just force to overcome, and it's on there and it's stout. You know, you push that thing over, you can shake the heck out of that gun. It's not coming back. It's on there, not going anywhere. And then you also have the ability to easily remove it. So if you didn't want it on the gun for some reason, or you wanted to use your 3x in a handheld configuration to look at something, maybe not point your gun down the road in the middle of the daytime, you know, you could pop that out and just kind of use that as glass to look. But the whole concept and the reason behind this mount, you know, to sort of back up and give the history of it, we about every 5 years we life cycle our weapons, we'll life cycle gear and kit. You know, about every 5 years we see technology changing. So we went from the old EOTech, remember the old 5.5.2? They had a AA version, I think it was the 5.5.1, and then the 5.5.2 was like the two little N-type batteries. So that's what we ran. And, you know, we had issues with it with recoil because the battery sat in there like sitting forward. The springs would get loose. So then when they came out with the XPS and the EXPS series, where now you had a 123 battery at side entry, like you can see right there on Augie's gun, it was just a better setup. And we competed that with an aim point because a lot of guys were running aim points, a lot of guys were running EOTechs, and we wanted to have one solution for our 416. So that ended up winning along with the 3x magnifier. And we were looking at other magnifiers that were out there at the time. The EOTech won for the optic and for the magnifier. What I found was, you know, guys were mounting these in different configurations. You know, I know when I mounted on my gun, there were times where you could see like the side of your EOTech window, or you could see the top of it. It just wasn't lining up perfectly. And the issued mount that came with those original magnifiers was a Samson mount. It was spring loaded. It fell apart a lot of times. It was junk. The tolerances on it were not very well. It wasn't well built. So, you know, I'd been working with Wilcox already on some projects. I went to him and he had this mount that I think a lot of guys are familiar with, this flip mount that was originally designed for the Skeet IR. I like this concept. I like the way that it worked. It was, you know, forced to overcome. Everything's great on it. And I just kind of took this to the next level, and we built this whole mount system that gave you one location to mount your day optic. It gave you that fixed location to mount your 3x, easy flip to side, just like the Skeet IR did, and then a quick detach. We also built in on it a place where you can, if you wanted to run backup irons, you know, you can co-witness your irons. So your rear will mount right into the slot back here. And then you got this small little riser block that comes with it. And that goes somewhere on your forward rail. And then you're able to mount your front backup iron. So you still had backup irons on your gun with this whole mounting system. And it worked. The other thing that we did with it is, I'm a big, I know so many people now are these crazy height over bore and all these super tall mounts. I am not. I'm nothing against them. You know, they work for some people. There are some advantages to it. I think that whole technology and that whole thing was just oversold. I am a big believer in as low over bore as I can get. You know, if you take the average guy and the average shooter, you know, and for this, you know, I train a lot of law enforcement and SWAT guys. They don't get the bullets. They don't get the range time. They don't get the time that we had to spend on the range and understand everything that's happening with their gun. So the more height that you create with your optic over bore, so now you have your optic up here, your barrel's down here. I mean, it's basic ballistics. You open up that travel of the round. So whatever you're zeroing at, and most guys will run a 50, 200 zero. So now at 50 yards, whatever that height is, you're telling that bullet when it leaves the barrel that it has to climb. You know, you're aiming the barrel up so that it meets your optic straight line out to infinity. You want those two lines to intersect at 50 yards. Well, what's happening beyond that is the bullet's still traveling in an upwards angle. So it still travels out to about 125 yards, and then gravity takes over, it falls back down, and it's on again about 200, right? Depending on bullets, barrel length, there's a lot of different factors in there, right? We don't have to geek out totally on it, but that's basically what happens. So you've got that height over bore. Now, again, the higher you go, you're increasing your offset. So talk about CQB distance offset, talk about distance, various distances all the way out to about, 225, 250 yards. You're just increasing the travel of the bullet above and below that line of sight. Again, take that law enforcement guy or that guy that doesn't shoot a lot and doesn't understand it. You're already giving him more error. So my philosophy is set those guys up for the best success you can. Give them a flattest shooting group from CQB distance all the way out to 250 yards, so that when their heart's racing, they haven't shot a lot, they don't know the exact distance of where that person is and where that threat is, and they just pull the bullet or the laser in the center of the chest, you're giving them the best solution you possibly can, right? Take away as much error as possible. So I'm a big fan over low height to bore. Now, with that being said, when we designed this, I was very adamant with Jim Tietzel and with Wilcox that I wanted this thing to be as low as possible. We had to have some type of a riser because we had to put these optics and put these things on there. But if you notice this way that this attaches, it has no thumb bars that attach it to the rail. The first design that they came out with had thumb bars on there. The thumb bar version of the low rise actually sits higher than this one does. This one, you have to remove your charging handle and it has to actually slide on from the rear. And then you have pins that go in the side, lock them into the pick rail. And then you have set screws on the top that lock it down. It's a little bit more tedious to mount it, but it gives you the lowest solution possible that we could build. So it's a totally different mounting system than anything else that's out there on the way that it goes onto the gun. And that specifically was to get the lowest height over bore as possible there. And then, of course, for the guys that do want something a little bit taller, there were times that I'd run a 5/8 rise mount on some of my guns. And it was more or less at one point in time, Greg Birch was my squadron CSM, and he is all about Pro Mask. Everything that we did was in Pro Mask. And, when you've got an optic flat on the gun, that's better for every condition. When you're shooting with a Pro Mask, it's absolutely horrible. So there is a 5/8 rise option that we're going to release on this mount also, just for those guys that do want something a little longer. And not everybody needs that super low rise. There are some guys that are just taller, have longer necks. I mean, every technique is not specific for one person. You've got to figure out what works best for you, what your gun setup is, what optic you're running, and there's different options in here to fit whoever's needs they have. So that's kind of the quick rundown. I don't know if that was quick, but that's kind of the back history of it, the design of it, and what we're looking to release in the two different versions.